They sought to feed each other, and they ended up feeding us all. I'll say it again. They sought to feed each other, and they ended up feeding us all. Well, that's all I have for you. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. No, I'm kidding, of course. But the reason it's funny is because we live in a culture of one-liners, a culture that prizes speed and efficiency. We love our spark notes of books, our abbreviations of words, and our clips of videos. We live and work in an information economy where we are encouraged to consume information constantly. But to what end? The importance of this question of ends or purpose struck me in college when I was in organic chemistry lab. My lab partner and I were talking about what we were doing that week. And I told him how I made great margarita pizza for my roommates the night before. It was so good that I was looking forward to the leftovers that night. He in turn told me that he didn't look forward to eating. He only ate when he was hungry. And he didn't eat very much because, in his words, he ate to live. He didn't live to eat. Now, I couldn't relate, and as you may have guessed, I still don't relate. But I got to thinking, why? Why don't I relate? And I realized it wasn't just that I love to eat pizza, but that I love sharing it with others. Even better than splitting a pizza at a restaurant would be inviting friends and family who also care about and appreciate pizza to my home, to share it at my table. Best of all would be to invite them over and make them the very best pizza they've ever had. To be in the kitchen crushing tomatoes for sauce together. To grate mozzarella together. To knead and shake dough together. To do all of these things while joking and teasing and laughing together. To channel all the time that I've spent researching and testing pizza recipes into something truly excellent. Something virtuous. And to do it together. That would be more than feeding our stomachs. That would be food for the soul. And that's why I'm here today. To talk about food for the soul. More specifically, though, I am here to talk about how the liberal arts are food for the soul. But what are the liberal arts? Contrary to popular belief, they are not the subjects that turn students into liberals. The liberal in liberal arts refers to freedom because they are thought to comprise an education worthy of free people. When we think of freedom, we are tempted to think of freedom too. The freedom to say what I think, for example. But freedom also includes freedom from. For example, the freedom from government compulsion. For the liberal arts to claim they are worthy of free people then means they must speak to both kinds of freedom. But they do more than speak to two kinds of freedom. They embody them in relationship. In the mutually edifying relationship between subjects. In the relationship between creative freedom and structure. And in the disposition towards those who have come before. To study the liberal arts requires that you don't just study the past. You seek to relate to it. You don't just dismiss what came before as other, but ponder how it speaks to a common we. In this way, the liberal arts are more than an intellectual framework. They are a spiritual and moral inheritance. Now, historically speaking, the liberal arts include 7 subjects: rhetoric, grammar, logic, astronomy, mathematics, geometry, and music. However, it was not the subjects themselves that was the paramount important. importance, but the relationship between the subjects. Each subject spoke to all the others. And the more one discovered how they spoke to one another, the deeper one's sense of wonder. Now, in our modern world, we tend to talk of liberal arts less as subjects and more as areas of study. In general, a modern liberal arts education combines the arts and humanities with social science and with natural science. The modern break from the 7 core subjects does not mean the liberal arts are dead, nor that they are irrelevant. As before, the primary characteristics of a modern liberal arts education are a sense of relationship and a sense of wonder. The modern liberal arts student learns that each area speaks to all the others. For some, the liberal arts are synonymous with great books, though again, people disagree about which books are great. Indeed, disagreement is part of the liberal arts tradition that we've inherited, a tradition of writers, artists, and scientists who dedicated their lives to engaging with the world, and by extension, to engaging with each other, to engaging with us. And among their ranks, we find emperors and slaves, revolutionaries and aristocrats, prisoners and prophets. They did not agree with each other, but they did seek to understand, persuade, and relate to each other. Persuasion required that they put themselves in another's shoes. For how could they expect to influence others unless they understood what drove them forward? Now, as I said earlier, pizza is one of the things that drives me. And this past summer, I had the opportunity to teach in Europe, and when I wasn't teaching, my dad and I got to travel. Of course, one of the things that I wanted to try was Neapolitan-style pizza. And one of my colleagues directed us to an authentic Neapolitan pizza place in Rome. The margherita pizza that arrived at my table defied most, if not all, of my ideas about pizza. For starters, the crust was so soft and tender, it couldn't be picked up. I had to cut it into small pieces with a knife and fork. The crushed tomatoes and the sauce were seasoned with nothing but sunshine. The fresh mozzarella pooled unevenly on top, and torn basil leaves were haphazardly cast about. It was not my idea of great pizza. But as I chewed, I realized my conception of pizza might have been too limited. Why, I pondered, could this version of pizza not be excellent? What was preventing me from savoring the delicate chew of the crust, the pools of rich mozzarella, the crisp edges of the charred basil leaves? It was me. I didn't want to confront my own assumptions. This wasn't about seeking the platonic form of pizza either, although I do think that would be a fun activity. It was a more fundamental issue, an issue of relationship. For if I could not confront my own assumptions about pizza, how could I get others to confront theirs? And that is the invitation of the liberal arts. An invitation to truly know yourself by getting to know others instead. Now, modern teachers and students following in this tradition argue about ideas, values, and aesthetics. They quarrel with the living and the dead. They debate in classrooms, on canvas, and in print. They pass on their perspectives in dough and in cheese. No medium or topic is off limits because they're all connected, because we as persons are all connected. Now, our intellectual ancestors sought to feed each other's souls. And the fruits of that harvest were so abundant, they prepared an intellectual and moral banquet for us as well. The question then is not, are the liberal arts relevant? No, the question is, do we see ourselves as relevant enough to deserve such an inheritance? Thank you.